What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I want to talk about kind of the nightmare scenario where we don't know the election results on November 3rd, election night. I think that is very common, considering because of the coronavirus, we're going to do a lot more mail-in voting. There's going to be a lot more absentee ballots, and I don't think all of these ballots can be counted. On election night. So I really don't even think, so in 2016, I think the election was called at about 1:30 a.m. in the morning for Donald Trump. And while there were some recounts in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, remember when Jill Stein raised all this money to do the recount, and it ended up that Donald Trump actually expanded on his margins. However, in 2018, this is one of the most overlooked stories, I think, of the 2018 midterms that I will show you in a little while. So on election night, the Democrats only thought that they had like a 20-seat House majority. And so the big headlines were, look, the Democrats take the House, the Republicans keep the Senate. And it was seen as kind of a blue wave, but the blue wave was actually a lot smaller than what people thought on election night because Republicans still won statewide in states like Florida, and the expectations that some people had, like I think Nate Silver had the Democrats winning by 40 seats, that did not look realistic on election night. There was over 20 House seats that hadn't been able to be called. So if we look here, they're leading in 23 seats, perhaps ending up with as much as a 20-seat edge. That 20-seat edge ended up being a 40-seat edge at the end of the day. So this story was written on November 7th, which was the election night. So going into 2020, the Atlantic, which is definitely a left-leaning newspaper, so it definitely has some bias, talks about the blue shift. And what the blue shift is that since 2004, they measured late ballots coming in have been overwhelmingly favoring the Democrats. So one story that they look at is when polling places quoted on November 6th, the blue wave looks like a ripple. Only, I think, about 27. If we look at it, it said that Paul Ryan only thought that the Democrats would win 27 seats, 26 seats. California just defies logic to me. We were only down 26 seats the night of the election, and 3 weeks later, we basically lost every single contested California race. And this is true. The Democrats ended up being 40 seats. And what the author of this article attributes this to is a lot of the voters that where their votes are counted in late tend to be younger, non-white, and transient voters, which tend to overwhelmingly help the Democratic Party. And so in 2018, it didn't matter much because the Democrats had the House majority even without the 13 to 14 contested seats that were not called until later. But I think in 2020, it could make a huge difference. And we remember that back in 2000 with Florida, that was a whole disaster. I had to go to the Supreme Court. In 2020, I'm expecting something much different. So I'm not going to go through this entire article, but you can read it yourself. So this is what I think a likely scenario will look like when all the major media outlets are covering the 2020 election. We're going to see wall-to-wall election coverage. The politics and media is only going to increase, and I think we're going to see more of it as it continues to grow. Because YouTube channels like mine are growing all over the place. But if this is how it is on election night, I think that Trump will declare victory because I think some media outlets will call it to Donald Trump. I'll be very interested to see when the media outlets call this, because in the past they've not been very good. We can go back all the way to 1948 when the Chicago Tribune called Dewey over Truman, the famous newspaper picture. And that was wrong. And in 2000, we had some media outlets calling Al Gore was the winner, some media outlets calling Bush as the winner, and they had to retract these. And with so many different media outlets and Twitter, I expect there to be a lot of disinformation. And some of the reasons why I think that the 2020 election night could end up being a disaster is because of coronavirus, there is going to be a lot of mail-in voting. And kind of how I see it shaping up to be is that probably more conservative Republican voters are going to vote in person, because I think that definitely, and the media definitely contributes to this, is that um, the more liberal people like that, they're not as much for like reopening the schools, and every single opportunity that Donald Trump could take the cultural war with, like reopening things, like reopening schools, having college football. Donald Trump has always taken the side of it's more important to reopen these things, and the consequences of not reopening um, are it would be worse than if we just kept on going and risk getting the virus. So I think a lot of Trump voters, a lot of Trump supporters are going to take his lead and vote in person because they might not trust vote by mail. They might not trust absentee ballots as much. So therefore, I think we're gonna have a disproportionate amount of Democrats try to do mail-in voting, and we see there's a whole political issue over this right now. Trump does not like mail-in voting because he thinks it leads to fraud. We've seen plenty of his Twitter account, plenty of his tweets saying that the 2020 election could be rigged with millions of mail-in ballots, though there's potential they could be printed by foreign countries and others. I think NPR, which is definitely a left-leaning news source, fact check this thing. But I definitely think in some of these states have been doing mail-in voting for a while. So like in Florida and Arizona, and Trump actually tweeted that he trusts it there. But some of these states have never done mail-in voting before, so they don't have the infrastructure to do so. And when I was on my road trip, I stopped in Seattle and I stopped in Portland, and there were just these boxes in public. They're like ballot drop boxes. And I really didn't know exactly how they worked, but I mean, it seemed to me that left a lot of room for potential fraud. I expect there's going to be a lot of disinformation. There's going to be a lot of foreign actors trying to affect our election. We've seen news reports that Russia wants Donald Trump to win again, but we've also seen news reports that China and Iran want Biden to win. And I think, frankly, China is probably a lot more powerful than Russia in this. And I mean, like China owns TikTok. They have a lot of the technology that we use does come from China. So we will see if how they try to affect the election if they do. But I think that 2020 election night could be a huge cluster because I think Americans, especially with technology and speed and social media, we will be expecting to know who the winner is on election night. And I think news organizations and media conglomerates are going to be pressured to try to break the story. I mean, every news um, station is trying to be the first one because that's speed is everything in media. So I think it's very possible that Trump could be up. I think this is a very possible outcome. Right now, I still have Biden in the lead, but this, like right here, this could be a very possible outcome. I'm going to change these characterizations where Trump is leading in states like Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Georgia by slim margins. So, like, let's say he's up by like 20,000 votes in all these states, up by like 50,000 in Florida. When the mail-in votes are coming in, if they're overwhelmingly Democratic, we could easily see a lot of these states just flip over to the tilt Democratic column. And you see right now, all Biden needs to do is flip two states, or even um, Trump does everything he did in 2016 except lose the state of Michigan. If we see a lot of mail-in votes coming into the state of Florida and Biden wins it, then he wins the election. And Florida historically has not been very good about counting their ballots on election day, as we saw in the 2000 election with hanging and pregnant chads. So I think that we are in for something. And whether I think we should expand mail-in voting or kind of limit it or have more rules like with voter ID. There's going to be a lot of logistics that we still haven't figured out. And we're only, I think, like 85 days from the election right now. So please comment what you think this is going to look like going into election day. I definitely think that the late ballots coming in are going to help the Democrats. So it might be that Donald Trump is up by a lot when the in-person ballots get counted first. I mean, this is just what I'm thinking about. Like Trump could even expand on his margins, but as these ballots start to come in, we could see some of these states go more for Biden, and it could just change the election. Right now, you see that Biden would win right here. So please comment how you think this will affect the race, because I'm really curious to see what y'all think. And I'll be very interested to see how the media covers this. If they try to call it on election night, or if they have the patience to kind of wait it out to actually see what really happens. So thank you guys for watching, and be on the lookout for another video tomorrow.